Today we're going to be talking about something that is pretty useful when it comes to editing and visual effects, and that is talking about green screen tips and tricks. We're going to talk about how to properly key. We're going to talk about where you can pick up some useful and affordable green screen items that can help with your projects. And more importantly, we're going to talk about what we can use green screen for, the purpose of it, and how we can create some really unique things using a green screen that would be a lot harder to create without a green screen. So if you do enjoy the content, leave a like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you want to see in the comments down below. The past two videos have been more of technical, kind of helping with your workflow type videos. Now we're back to our regular grind of creative and interesting looks. This video in particular is going to be a little bit of a mix of that. We're going to talk about useful techniques for using green screen and keying properly, and we're going to talk about creating some unique looks with the green screen itself. So step one, we're going to get right into this, is what green screen to use. Now I recommend three different things. The first one, if you're tight on money, if you want to get a cheap, affordable green screen, you can get one for $10 to $20, one of these fold out fabric ones that you can get fold into this little zip up bag, fold it back out. Now me personally, I don't like the quality of it. It's kind of annoying to kind of fold back into the little circle ring they have. But the thing that I use a lot, the green screen that I really recommend, and it's a little bit more expensive, but it's not too crazy, is actually what I'm using to record all of my tutorials right now. So as you can see, I turned my chroma key off for my green screen background here, and you'll be able to see what it looks like. And it's basically this fold out green screen that I can pull up and down. I highly recommend it. It's easy to pack in, pack out. You can carry it with the handle. So that's a good portable green screen. Another thing I would recommend doing if you are shooting a more high budget video and you have some budget for location, you guys can book a place that has one of these green cycs or white cycs, spelled CYC, cyclone. It's basically this giant backdrop of either green or white or blue, whatever you need to use. This is useful for getting these full body shots like this, and these are usually pretty cheap to rent as well. Usually a nice site that I use is called peerspace.com. Of course, depends on what city you're in. Look into this. If you are in a larger city, you can probably find a lot of locations that rent out sets like this for pretty cheap. And then the last thing we're going to talk about, the last little bit of gear, is one of these full body green suits that you guys can see here. And this is pretty interesting because we can use this to create a lot of unique visual effects, which I'm going to show you in the tutorial portion coming in a few moments. These are pretty cheap as well. I'm going to leave some Amazon links below, and we'll talk all about using that, properly keying it so that it doesn't look choppy. So for the green bodysuit, the one thing that you want to be very wary of is that there isn't a lot of shadows and that you're using proper lighting in the scene to make sure that everything is going smooth. So I'm going to show you a lot of techniques to fix if there is some spilling with the green color. So I'll go ahead and click Control K in Adobe Premiere and just cut out a little chunk of these scenes here. And then what I'm going to do is just right click on that clip that we just cut out that has the part we want to apply our keying to. And I'm going to click replace with After Effects composition to open that up into After Effects. Of course, if you only have After Effects, you can just open the clip that you want to do the effect in After Effects. All right, guys, so we have our clip within Adobe After Effects, as you can see. One reason why we're using the green screen suit here to create this effect is it just makes it a lot easier to be able to key out the green parts and then replace that cutout with a texture than it would be to kind of rotoscope or mask a character if you wanted to do this kind of full body character. Now, what I'm going to do is show you the full workflow I use for keying, and this is pretty much the same for using the suit and for the second part, which is going to be designing the whole environment or set with the green screen full body shots. So my keying process, first things first, what I do is I go over to my effects and presets window here and I search for the key light effect. This one is included in After Effects and it's pretty good. You can go ahead and just select this dropper next to screen color and you can go ahead and select the actual green color here. And you'll see it's going to do its best, but you'll see there's a lot of spill going on. It's just looking very choppy overall. So to fix that, what we're going to do is you're going to see these three little color dots here, this green, blue, and red, show channel and color management settings. If you click that, you can change your viewing from RGB colors to viewing the alpha. So now it's going to only show you the alpha channel. So now you can go up to your key light, your effects and presets for this clip selected. You can open up your screen mat here, and you're going to want to first start with two settings, and that is your clip black and your clip white settings. So open those up, And you're gonna wanna go ahead and just kind of manipulate those to change it so that it looks more like a straight silhouette instead of this kind of cloudy background that we're getting here. So if I clip the black, my goal is to kind of isolate it so that it looks like a full black figure without making all of these other things come into focus. So what I would do is I would move it to around right there. 40 is perfect for this scene in particular. Of course, depending on the scene, it's always going to be different values. And then for the clip white, we want to kind of get rid of these little edges here. That looks good. So you can see we're basically isolating the character a little bit better. To see this in full color, go ahead and click back on your little dots here and change that back to RGB. And if you want to kind of do a little bit of tweaking, seeing with the full color, you can of course use your values and maybe tweak a little bit here, but using those alpha channel settings and viewing it that way is a lot easier when it comes to getting that clean key. Now there's a few more steps here. We're going to add a few more things on top of this. And once we talk about this, once we get this out of the way, we're going to basically, like I said, use that workflow for everything else that I'm going to show you. It's just applied in a different fashion. So the next thing that we like to do here is this screen softness value. So we can bump that up a few, and this is basically going to feather the edge of our cutout that we have here. I wouldn't go too overboard with it. It'll start to get a little too soft and fuzzy. I usually put mine around 10 maximum. Now, another thing you can do, and this is something that I think a lot of people overlook, is change your replace method from soft color to source. You're gonna see a lot of the green comes back, but we're gonna fix that once we add some spill suppression presets on top of this. So change it back to source, because sometimes putting it on soft color, it takes away a lot of the detail and it kind of makes things look grainy. You may notice that if you just leave it at key light, a lot of things that don't have proper lighting, you'll have a lot of grain that looks really bad. This is the proxy file, so it's pretty low res, but there's a lot of kind of grain and noise. If I just zoom in here and move a few frames, there's a lot of grain and noise that's going through there because it's not a proper key. So first, switch that to source. Bring the green back in some of those highlights, and then we're going to get rid of it with this next preset and effect. So go back to your effects and presets bin here. If you're not seeing that, go to window, just click on effects and presets. We're going to look up the key cleaner effect. So just look up key cleaner, apply that onto here, and that's just going to soften up some of your edges even more. You can leave those settings for now. If you want to bump the additional edge radius, you can play around with that, but I wouldn't edit it too much. The thing that we want to add next, which is one of my favorite things for keying, it really just kind of ties everything together, fixes it all up, is the advanced spill suppressor. So go ahead and look that up. It's under your keying folder here, and these are all built into After Effects. Place that on your clip, and you're going to see a lot of things happening. So what I like to do is, instead of keeping it on standard for my advanced spill suppressor, I put that on ultra. That way it does the same job. It gets rid of the green, but it still kind of keeps some of that coloring to make it look a little bit more realistic. So you can mess around between standard and ultra. Ultra, I think, just makes it look a lot better. So now we have our suit cut out. This is all transparency here. So if I toggle this, you'll see this will just be checkerboard. So we can place any kind of texture behind this to bring this character to life. So it's not just a black cutout, it's anything that we want. Now, what I recommend you guys do is you find your own texture library. You start building assets that you download online into one folder that you guys can pull from. A great place to start is my website. You can download free VHS packs as well as a bunch of other free resources which you can use for this. Link to that will be down below. So in this case, I was actually provided already with this static clip to use for the background based on the treatment for the music video. So I can just drag the static clip that we have in here. I can even right click, go to transform, and go to fit to comp. And if you are looking for any of these kind of VHS static, like I said, I have a bunch of free ones on my website. Go ahead and check that out. We want to take that and drag it in a layer below our keyed layer. And now you'll see that our texture is now within the cutout of our character. Now keep in mind, if your character is going to be moving around a lot, you may want to use some simple tracking or even some positional keyframes to kind of move the texture around with him. But if you're using something like static, where basically the entire texture is the same thing, is still going to look fine. So it really does depend on your texture. But if you are having issues where it looks like the cutout is moving too far away from your texture, it just kind of looks like layers instead of one set character, then go ahead and check the link down below to check out some of my motion tracking tutorials, and that'll give you a good basis on how to fix that and track the texture to the character. For this example, we're good to go. So you can ignore the static up here because this is shot widescreen on a red camera. So I'm going to show you a few more little bonus steps before we get into the green screen environment creation, and that is really creating that cool Black Mirror kind of censored look on the character. So we have him here with all our static. What I like to do, I clicked on my static and clicked Control D to duplicate that, and I put that on hard light. So change your blending mode from hard light. If you're not seeing that, you can go ahead and click toggle switches and modes here. Next, what I did was I opened up the transform options for the hard light duplication here, and I put my opacity down a bit, maybe to around 75. And then I looked up a little mosaic effect and preset. So go ahead and search for the mosaic effect. It's under stylized, and this is of course again built into Adobe After Effects. I placed that on here. I bumped up the blocks to kind of get this cool looking pixelated looking character here. And if I drag along and try and find some better example, and looking back at my original project file just to see some of the other things I added on to get this desired look that you guys are seeing, what I did on the original normal here is I added a universe RGB separation. This is a third-party plugin from the Red Giant Universe pack separation, which you can see here. I'll turn it on and off. And this is actually pretty easy to do without plugins. I'm gonna leave a tutorial down below if you'd like to do it. It's very simple. So just a tiny little Gaussian blur. You can search for that. I made the blurriness 4, and then one more little brightness contrast just to fix that. On my duplicated layer that has the mosaic, the horizontal blocks I was using was 36, 36. And then of course another uni RGB separation. Let's get into the next part, which is creating entire sets using green screen. And there's a bunch of different ways you can create the background set. What you can do is create some sort of matte painting. So you can use Photoshop and create some sort of 2D image or animated image of a background here and kind of composite your character into that. What you can also do is you can use 3D, so Element 3D, Cinema 4D, Maya, 3ds Max to create the background as well. This is useful because you can use 3D camera tracking, match that 3D camera tracking with the 3D, and then you can kind of basically create the environment from scratch that way. A notable music video that came out a little bit ago that used that was the Little Skies and Young Pinch Nightmares music video, where they have the trees falling behind them. They have this nice Japanese setting. A lot of that was using 3D to kind of set up that environment. We're just going to show you how to do it the basic way in After Effects, how we can take some images, how we can do some simple stuff to create a kind of background like you're seeing on the screen right now. Those are just going to be using still images, but if you are interested in the 3D environment design, I'm going to leave some of my 3D tutorials. If you want to see a part 2 to this where I get into the green screen, creating a 3D environment, or green screen matte paintings like I was talking about earlier, just leave a comment down below, but let's go ahead and get right into this. So to do that, we're going to use our same keying techniques which I showed you for the green screen suit. So pretty easy since we already showed you. And of course, if you think this is blurry, that's because it is. I'm using the proxy file. At the ending render, you'll see the full HD version of this. But anyways, to key this out, what we're going to do is we're going to go to our effects and presets. We're going to search for the key light effect and place that onto our clip. And with our key light, we're going to grab our dropper and just select the green color here. And you'll see it's a little bit shady here. His arms are getting a little bit deleted from the lighting going on his jacket. Now to avoid that, to kind of give yourself the best possible start in post, is to make sure there's lighting on him. Try and neutralize that green color. So get lighting close to the jackets where there's a lot of green spill going on, and that'll help you in post. But of course, using these tricks we're about to show you that we talked about earlier, we can completely fix this up. So step 1, we're going to click on our 3 little dots here, our show channel and color management, and we're going to change that to our alpha channel. Next, what you want to do is you want to open up your screen matte section for your key light. Open up your clip black and your clip white. We'll start with the clip black. We'll try and neutralize all those white edges, and then with the clip white, we'll try and make that as silhouette-like as possible, so that should be good. If we switch our color settings back to RGB, you'll see now our key is looking a little bit better. Next, all we need to do in the key light section is let's add a bit of screen softness on the edges here. So maybe around 3 for this. We don't want it to look too choppy. And then for our screen replace method, we want to change that from soft color to source. And you'll see a bunch of the green come up. We can change it back to soft color if our spill suppression isn't working. So keep that in mind. Don't worry about it. So look up your advanced spill suppressor here. Drag that onto your clip. And of course, you're going to want to experiment here. Do you want standard? Do you want ultra? I think standard may look a little bit better in this instance. And then of course, you guys can use brightness, contrast, effects, and presets to kind of composite a little bit better once we build our environment. So first, let's build our environment. Like I said, we want to go for this kind of Freddy Krueger theme. So we'll file save this for now. And this checkered means this is all completely transparent. So now we can place anything behind our subject here, and it's going to look like it's in that environment as long as we blend it well. So in the examples I was showing you, I used this image here. So we're going to go ahead and right click, save image as, save that, and then go ahead and just show it in a folder and drag that directly into Adobe After Effects. You can drag it into here. We'll drag that in a layer below. And then I'm going to go ahead and click S and resize this so that it's fitting the full screen here. Next, what we want to do is take our actual character. I'll click S, and I'm also going to scale this to try and be in the same dimensions where Freddy is. And then I'm actually going to hide him, and we're going to go ahead and just use some masking, some compositing to completely get rid of this. Now, if you have the newer version of After Effects, they have a feature which is going to be super useful, especially for this, and that is their content aware autofill button. Now, I'm using, I think, After Effects 2018, so I don't have autofill. I am familiar with using autofill, the content aware autofill on Photoshop. So if you want to do it in Photoshop, you can do it there. It's very easy. But it's also very easy just to kind of mask this out and do a little bit of tweaking with After Effects masking. So I'll just show you that. If you want to do the content fill aware trick where just completely the computer gets rid of it for you, go ahead and just look that up on YouTube or Google. There's a lot of very simple methods and tutorials on how to do that. What I'm going to show you here, I think, is just going to help you more in general, because this is showing the basics of masking and taking pieces and manipulating the way you want them to kind of make the scene that you want. So this is going to help you in the long run. So step one, this is our background. Let's name it background. I'm going to click Control D on it to duplicate it, and I'm going to rename that to wall piece. So in our wall piece background here, our duplication of this image, I'm going to grab my pen tool, and I'm going to maybe mask out this part of the wall here. So this little chunk. Now, if I select that, you can drag it out, put it over where he is. And we're just going to use some masking to kind of blend that. So I'll click M on this. I'll open up the mask, and I'll just feather it. And the key here is just to kind of make it look not horrible. And with our floor here to get rid of his legs, we'll click Control D. Pen tool, we'll select this part of the ground, this kind of triangle area, and then name that ground. If we click V to bring up our normal pointer, we can, as you see, just kind of try and cover up as best as possible. And this is going to really just look bad until you completely start to cover things up. And the way to do that is by selecting it, you click M on your mask, and you feather. Feather is how you blend things in. You may need to adjust the mask in certain places, but you see now it's starting to look a little bit better. Let's Control D on that ground piece because this is a pretty good one. And maybe let's rotate it. And we'll do the same with this kind of top area here. So Control D. This is going to look, like I said, really kind of weird and choppy until you put everything together and then place your subject in front of the area that you're trying to take out. Because essentially what you're doing is just taking little chunks of the background image, feathering and masking those chunks to try and blend them with the original image, to try and take something out of that original image. You can definitely tell that there was something being covered up here, but if you place something in front of that, like our character here, like our subject that we got from our green screen clip, then it doesn't look as bad because it's covering up that silhouette to begin with. And it's going to need a few more little patching work. You can still see some of it kind of bleeding through the edge here, so let's keep working, but we're definitely getting into the right direction here. You can even Control D to duplicate this kind of piping on the wall here. You can completely rotate this or just grab this edge and just flip it like that. You can kind of stretch it out like this and mask it so that it's kind of feathered. And as you can see, you can kind of manipulate the background to make it look the way you want. So I think that's looking a bit better. The top may need to be cleaned up a bit. This was our starting part here. And with our masking, using that feathering, using all those little tips and tricks I just showed you, here is what we created. So a bit different, but we have our own little picture set. And again, I want to reiterate, is this the main method I would use for every single green screen set creation? No, 100% not, especially not if I'm doing some sort of larger project and I'm trying to pull things from already made images, but maybe just using different Google images, different backgrounds, Photoshop, and having that kind of knowledge of being able to mask, composite, having that knowledge together can help you pull something off like this. Now, the last steps we need to do here is let's kind of mix together our subject with the background a bit. Let's try and color correct and composite him a little bit better. So step one, I'm going to look up brightness and contrast. And like I said, I'm using a proxy file here, so he's going to look horrible. This is like 240 by 300 quality no matter what. I'm just doing it so that I can give you these RAM previews clean and everything isn't going to be lagging as I work. This is a very kind of dark, shadowy area, so let's give him more contrast here. It's very red in this background. So I'm going to look up the curves effects under color correction, and I'm going to go to our red, and I'm just going to bump up a tiny bit of red here. Now, another thing that I like to do to kind of give the environment a little bit more life is I actually use these free fog overlays. I'm going to leave a link below to that if you want to check it out. Let's go ahead and try and find something that looks a little bit nice. So maybe this ground fog rolling, and next you go to toggle switches and modes, and you change your blending mode to screen so that you can see it in there. Now, if you really want to get creative with this, what you can do is you can actually use the curves like I just showed you, and you can add a red tint to kind of match with the lighting, something like this. So that's always available. This ground fog, thick, slow. We'll place that on a layer above our actual character here. And not sure if I mentioned it before, but if you do want to learn how to create proxy files, so low res files that are linked to our HD files, like I mentioned earlier, these are all red clips. So if you want to know how to do that, I made a video last week about that. So check out the link below and that'll 100% help you with that. Anyways, let's turn the ground fog on here. Same thing, we'll turn the mode to either add, screen, lighten, whatever you want to do. Let's maybe put this one on add. Let's make this kind of thicker fog. And now you'll see it has a lot more depth because we have fog in front of our character, we have fog behind our character, and it just kind of adds more to the illusion. You can reposition this in the timeline. I'll maybe drag this forward to see some of the fog rising. Last thing I did here for those backgrounds that I was showing you is what you can do is select all these pieces, since these are all masked pieces put together. Hold down Shift and click to select all of them. Right click, pre-compose them, and I'll just name this background composites, click OK. And then for our background composite, to give that a bit of life, you can add curves, you can add any kind of glowing to kind of give it some more realistic lighting, or just more like lively lighting in the background. And then the last thing that I would recommend you do to finish this off is add a little shadow. Now for this, I would recommend you look up some lighting tutorials to know what a realistic shadow would look like. You can kind of free eye it. If it's a really unrealistic looking shadow, it's gonna look bad. But even if it's a slightly realistic looking shadow, it's gonna make this look a million times better. To do that, it's actually pretty easy. Select your actual character layer here. Click Control D to duplicate that. And then I'll just rename this to shadow. We'll drag the shadow layer below our character layer. And then on the shadow layer, what we're gonna do is a few things. Step number one, just change your blending mode. If you don't see that, toggle switches and modes. Change your blending mode to, I like either soft light or hard light. Let's go with soft light. And then for my effects and presets, I'm going to just look up a fill effect. You can also just use a tint effect, whatever you like better. Place that on your shadow and it'll pop up in your effect controls. Just change the fill to black. And then we're gonna take the shadow layer and just move it over so we can really see it. Here's what it's looking like for now. And to give it that real shadow feel, we're gonna go ahead and change, we're gonna look up a little Gaussian blur effect. Place the Gaussian blur onto your shadow layer and then bump up the blurriness until this looks a lot more soft. And you can see now it looks like light that's being projected into the background. And you guys can mess around with the blending mode here to kind of change the look of the shadow. Hard light, here's what that looks like. Here's soft light. If you can pull it off for the scene the right way, then it can make your composite look a lot better. And then the last thing that I would usually do once I've created my environment, I would do some final color correction in Adobe Premiere from that dynamic link. What I especially like doing is adding a LUT onto the full thing, so every element in the scene has the same matching color LUT. That'll help your composite a lot. The CMG Summer LUT 17, this is a nice one for this one. Maybe add some contrast, you can mess with your shadows, bump up your highlights, do whatever you want to do. Those are my basic steps though for creating what you just saw at the beginning, for creating those kind of basic green screen background just using a 2D image. Like I said, if you want to see a part 2 where I kind of expand on this and I talk more onto 3D environment background, we can talk about 2D with 3D, 3D for moving elements in the background or maybe interactive things in the background, and then the 2D for using Photoshop to fully paint your background however you like it. Let me know. That's 100% something I'm interested in, and that's something I could bring out to you guys next. You can create some cool looking stuff, and of course, you don't have to just look up Freddy Krueger background or whatever. You don't have to pull from movies or whatever it is. You guys can look up any kind of environment. Just make sure you're careful with the copyright around that, and manipulate it using that photo manipulation to take the elements that you need and then composite them in the way that you like. Hope you did enjoy. Leave a like, comment, subscribe if you did. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for supporting, and I'll see you guys in the next one.